Hey, what's up, guys? This is part 3 of my interview with New Vegas designer Robert Lee. There are several references to a bunker that was meant to appear at Cottonwood Cove. Most notably, a cut irradiated radroach that functioned like a glowing one would have spawned there. Since Robert designed the area, I had to ask him about the cut bunker. I think that bunker was initially going to be a nuke everything option. The player would have gone down into the bunker and set the core to explode, irradiating the entire area in and around Cottonwood Cove. It ended up being more work than it would have been worth, so we abandoned it. The Atomic Wrangler in Freeside has two interesting pieces of cut content. First, there's an empty dialogue topic titled VFS Dealer Black Widow. Presumably, this would allow a female courier to charm the Atomic Wrangler's card dealers and rig the casino games in their favor. Intrigued, I ask Rob. VFS dealer Black Widow may very well have been in the game, but was cut when we ran way over budget for the game's dialogue. It was indeed intended to allow the player to charm the dealer. During the quest Debt Collector, the Garrett twins tasked the player to kill Caleb McCaffrey. Caleb has unused AI packages that were meant to be used before the player accepted the quest. In particular, he would have slept in the player's room at the Atomic Wrangler. It's implied that Caleb was the Garrett's debt collector before they hired you, so it makes sense that he would have appeared there, and I asked Robert about it. He was originally set up to use that room as his room before it's gifted to the player as a reward for finishing the Garrett's work. I spent some time setting up sensible AI schedules for everyone I knew would be in the building. I think originally, McCaffrey was going to draw on the player after confronted in the Wrangler, but we decided to draw the player into the strip to finish the quest. One of the most memorable aspects of Dead Money are the ghost people, and the script that controls their zombie mechanic is one of the most complex in the game, so I asked Rob about it. I may be mistaken, but the ghost people scripts in there are probably unused by the actual NPCs that ended up in the game. Most of the time, I made a prototype script that got the gameplay working as close to intended as possible. Then Jonathan Burke hard-coded it into a unique entity we could just drop into the world without a bunch of hacky scripts attached. The essential flag was what I was using to make them invincible until a limb gets blown off. You'd have to do a ref check to see if any of the ghosts in the world actually use those scripts. Handy for modders to get ideas, but a lot of things were left in the engine for that very reason. We needed later references in case we wanted to recreate similar gameplay down the road, and we also wanted modders to have an idea of how we put stuff together. One of the big reasons I tried to comment on my scripts. Between the ghost people and Dead Money, Nellis's artillery, and more, Rob was responsible for some of the most impressive scripting in the entire game, and I inquired with him about it. Scripting is a funny thing. I started out in my undergrad focused on computer science, realized I hated debugging code, and switched to digital studio art and philosophy. When I finally went to grad school at SMU's Guildhall, I played around with randomly generated emergence holes and companion barks in Gears of War Editor. That made me understand how important a strong grasp of symbolic logic is to making immersive, randomized, and/or choice-driven experiences. I think it's hilarious that anyone thought that video was some kind of leaked Gears of War 2 footage. Creative use of existing art and audio is a big part of what designers do on a regular basis when budgets are tight. One of my favorite features of the GECK was how intuitive the scripting language is. I told the guys at Bethesda their editor was painfully powerful. Painful because it was far too easy for scripting novices to do very bad things. But powerful in that you could craft amazing things on the fly on virtually anything. I just wish I'd known I could use empty quest as global script updates at the beginning of development. Far too often, we relied on invisible floating entities with a script on them when the quest could be run anywhere and could have the timing set rather than run every frame. This is how we safely pushed many of the patch changes post-release. The best advice I can offer to aspiring designers is learn how to code. At the very least, dive head first into something like Arduino or Raspberry Pi. Learning even the most basic symbolic logic is immensely useful when you're trying to figure out how to branch dialogue or encounters with conditions, do skill/perk or global variable checks for spawning encounters, or anything interesting in a game. The beautiful thing about coding is the more you learn, the more options you have. Arduino is a perfect example. One day, you're messing around with basic LED programming, and eventually, you're making a fully lit Pip-Boy with a Raspberry Pi computer built in. Life is the ultimate RPG. Finally, I asked Rob about his process as an area designer. Design process varies based on the kind of game you're making, but a core fundamental is to be mindful of the tried and true story arc. There's a Japanese concept called Kisho Tenketsu that boils it down pretty effectively and has been used extensively by Nintendo. Game Maker's Toolkit has a great video about this. In any game, you want to do 4 things. 1. Introduce concepts. This can be new enemies, equipment, gameplay concepts like traps, puzzles, etc. 2. Give time to practice. The player needs time to acclimate to this new information and at least acquire a passable skill level using it. Level design layout and timing is especially important for practice time. 3. Introduce a twist. Use this new concept in a novel way to keep the player engaged and thinking about other potential ways to leverage their toolkit. 4. Conclude. The player can now reap the rewards of their mastery of this concept. Think of the dangling collectible fruit of games like Crackdown, or the force-field loot caches in Old World Blues. This 4-part methodology has been used for storytelling for ages. Look at any traditional comic strip, and you might notice it uses 4 cells with this exact process. Set scene, develop, twist, conclusion. Beyond this, and many other common design fundamentals I've learned over the years, I'd say my main philosophy is keep the player thinking. It's easy for even seemingly complex gameplay to get monotonous. Are your areas always colorful or sticking to a single methodology? What makes each area, character, combat, etc. memorable and engaging? If you're at a loss for words, go back to the drawing board. Don't spend too much time on paper, but if your ideas don't at least look fun on paper, it's probably not going to be fun in-game. I could talk at length on this topic, and should probably work on a GDC presentation, or at least some YouTube videos. And that's all for part 3 of Memories of the Mojave with Robert Lee. As always, thanks for watching.